Hello everyone, welcome to English second paper class of Academic English brought to you by this online platform. How are you all? I hope and believe that all of you are doing very fine by the grace of Almighty. This is Simi Dango, lecturer in English, St. Gregory's High School and College. Dear boys, in our previous lectures we have been discussing about transformation of sentences. We have been discussing in two classes about so many rules of changing sentences from affirmative to negative and negative to affirmative. In this lesson also, we will be discussing the same topic, that is transformation of sentences. As a part of today's lesson, we will discuss some exceptional rules of changing sentences from affirmative to negative. Dear boys, as I am providing recorded classes for you through YouTube channel, maybe you will find so many problems while watching the video. If you find any problem while watching the video, feel free to ask me. You can ask me in YouTube comment box, you can ask me in post comment box, and also now you have got my email address. You can ask your question there also. Dear boys, any type of question regarding your classes, you can ask me. So now, dear boys, let's move to our lesson. If you have sometimes in affirmative sentence, and if you want to change the affirmative sentence into negative, then use not always. Dear boys, if you have sometimes in affirmative sentence, and if you want to change the affirmative sentence into negative, then use not always. Here you can see not always. If you have sometimes in affirmative sentence, use not always to make the sentence negative. For example, he sometimes smokes. And here you are instructed to use not always instead of sometimes. So firstly, we will write down he, and to make the negative, we have to use the auxiliary verb does not, and after that, we will use not always instead of sometimes. So we will write down he does not always smoke. Here we have another example. We sometimes go there. So dear boys, we are going to write down we do not always go there. We do not always go there. And here also we are using not always instead of sometimes. Here we have another example. A scholar is not always right. A scholar is not always right. So the answer is the scholar is not always right. A scholar is also sometimes wrong. A scholar is also sometimes wrong. And we will write down a scholar is not always right. As wrong is an adjective here, while changing sentences from affirmative to negative, we have to use the negative adjective here. So we will write down a scholar is not always right. So another example left, that is he sometimes goes to the cinema. He sometimes goes to the cinema. And here we are going to write down he sometimes does not go to the cinema. He sometimes, sorry dear boys, here you have to write down he does not always go to the cinema. He does not always go to the cinema. Okay. Now move to the second rule. If you have for the last time in affirmative sentence, if you have for the last time in affirmative sentence, then use never to make the sentence negative. Dear boys, here we have some examples. I come here for the last time. So what are we instructed? we are instructed to use never instead of for the last time. So here we are going to write down, I shall never come here. I shall never come here. I saw him for the last time then. We are going to write down never instead of last time. So the answer is, I have never seen him since then. I shall never, I have never seen him since then. Okay, here we have another example. I warn you for the last time. And the answer is, I shall never warn you again. And if you want to change the sentence from negative to affirmative, and dear boys, you all know that what you need to do, only you have to reverse the rule. Just like if you say, I shall never come here, then you have to write down, I come here for the last time. If you have in your sentence, I have never seen him since then you have to write down, I saw him for the last time then. Okay? So now let's move to the next rule. Here we have, if you have forever or for good in affirmative sentence, then what we need to do to change the sentence into negative. Dear boys, if we have forever or for good in our affirmative sentence, then we have to use never instead of these two words. Use never for forever and use for good. Use never for good also. Okay, now let's see some example. He has left the village forever. He has left the village forever. So we are going to use never instead of forever. He will never come back to the village again. He will never come back to the village again. Okay, now let's move to the next example. Here you can see, I have given up smoking forever. And we are going to use never instead of forever. So we will write down, I shall never smoke again. I shall never smoke again. Then the next one, they have sold the house for good. They have sold the house for good. So instead of for good, we are going to write down never. They will never buy or purchase the house. They will never buy or purchase the house. This is a little bit different. When you are going to change this type of sentences, then you have to face a little bit difficulties, because these sentences, when we are changing from affirmative to negative, these are a little bit different. So dear boys, now let's move to the next rule. If you have all in affirmative sentence, then what to do? If we have all in our affirmative sentence, then we have to use no instead of all. Okay, now let's see some example. All men here are poor. No men here are rich. Dear boys, we are using all as our subject. Here you have to notice one thing, that here we are using all as our subject. When we are using all as our subject in our affirmative sentence, then we have to use no to change the sentence into negative. Okay, here you can see, all men here are poor. So the answer is, no men here are rich. And we did one thing here, that is, we have used negative word also. For the adjective poor, we have used the negative adjective rich. Okay, so here you can see, all must submit to destiny. Okay, so we are going to write down, no one can escape his or her destiny. Okay, move to the next example. All but he have passed. No one or none but he has failed. All men are mortal. No man is immortal. So dear boys, if you want to change the sentences from negative to affirmative, what you need to do, yes, you know that we have to reverse the rule only, right? If we have the sentence like this, no man is immortal, then what to do? Instead of no, we are going to use all. Okay, then we are going to use the plural form of the subject. All men are, instead of immortal, we are going to use the affirmative adjective, that is mortal. All men are mortal. So very easy. And if we have no one or none but he has failed in our sentence, then if we want to change the negative sentence into affirmative, then we should write down all but he have passed. Okay, now let's move to the next part. Okay, here if you have must in affirmative sentence and all is not subject here we have one condition. Okay, that is all is not subject here. Firstly, we have must in our affirmative sentence, and secondly, all is not the subject. So what we need to do now, we have to use cannot but to make the sentence negative. Okay dear boys, are you clear? So you see, if you have must in affirmative sentence and all is not the subject, then you have to use cannot but to make the sentence negative. We must do it. The answer will be we cannot but do it. Very easy. And the next one, we must die. Instead of must, we are going to use cannot but. We cannot but die. Okay? Or we can say we cannot escape death. Okay. So you see, he must buy a grammar book. So we are changing this sentence into negative like this. He cannot but buy a grammar book. So here we have another affirmative sentence. You must listen to your teacher. You must listen to your teacher. The answer is you cannot but listen to your teacher. You cannot but listen to your teacher. Okay, dear boys. Then what if we want to change the sentence from negative to affirmative? And already you know the rule. So, dear boys, we're going to do just like this. You cannot but listen to your teacher. We are going to use must instead of cannot but. Okay, the subject is you. You must listen to your teacher. Okay, he cannot but buy a grammar book. Now what to do? At first you have to write down the subject, he, and then write down must instead of cannot. He must buy a grammar book. Okay, now move to the next rule. If you have forever or for good in affirmative sentence, use never to make negative. Dear boys, so this is not related. Okay, here we have some other examples. You see, she must obey his orders. She must obey his orders. Then what to write down? She cannot but obey his orders. She cannot but obey his orders. She cannot but obey his orders. Okay. Now, next one. A student must be disciplined. A student cannot but be disciplined. We must love one another. We cannot but love one another. Okay? So if you want to change the sentence from negative to affirmative, do the reverse. Okay? So we cannot but love one another. Then say, we must love one another. Isn't it very easy? I have already given you so many rules of changing sentences from affirmative to negative. Now, what you need to do? You have to practice exercising some sentences. You have to find out some sentences from your book, and you have to try your best to change sentences from affirmative to negative and from negative to affirmative. This is your first and foremost duty. At first, try by yourself. If you find any problem, then feel free to ask me. Dear boys, if you find any problem while changing the sentences from affirmative to negative and from negative to affirmative, then ask me in the comment box.
So here you have affirmative sentence. He was always punctual. So make it negative. So here you have another example. The sentence is negative. I never tell lie. So what you need to do here? Here you need to change the sentence into affirmative. Okay? So no other boy in the class is as good as you. Change the sentence into affirmative. So here you have affirmative sentence, which you need to change into negative is he is better than any other boy in the class. Okay, the next one. The sum was too difficult for me to work out. Change the sentence into negative. So here you have another negative sentence. He is so weak that he cannot walk. Dear boys, you know how to change this sentence into affirmative. Okay. The next one. He is as good as you. As this sentence is affirmative, change this sentence into negative. Okay. He is not as ugly as you said. This sentence is negative. Now, what you need to do? You need to change this sentence into affirmative.
So dear boys, that's the end of today's lesson. If you find any type of problem while watching this class, feel free to ask me. I'll be there for you to answer all the questions regarding your lesson. Take care of your family members, take care of your youngers, help your mother in cooking, help your youngers in their studies. Help your family members in other activities. Dear boys, take care. Thanks to you all.